Well, hello there. Welcome back to another Movies Down Memory Lane, the show where three friends get together and talk about the movies that mean the most to them. Sorry for that weird opening. I don't know what happened because my internet froze on me for a second, but then suddenly I was back here, and it was like things were working, and then so I don't know exactly how that beginning happened. Works is going to end up being.
Sounds like it dropped for a second and then
it dropped and
back
then
on.
I've been having issues in the area. This is what happens when a big company buys your good internet and then takes it over and then makes it shitty internet. Because I used to have a Lumos, which was a more local internet that was great, and then T-Mobile came in and bought them. So now I have shitty
T-Mobile
internet.
had that swag.
Yeah. Now I have shitty internet. So this video is not brought to you by T-Mobile. I can tell you that. But here we are back again on Movies Down Memory Lane. Like I said, the show where we come in and talk about the movies that mean the most of us. This installment here is all about Dan's pick, his spotlight, and he chose our first documentary. Documentaries are kind of not one. I didn't think we were going to have documentaries on here, but Dan was the first one to throw one in. And please tell us about the film you brought in for us this week.
Yeah, it's a documentary called Hoop Dreams. It's from director Steve James. He basically chronicles the lives of two inner city Chicago high school basketball players, Arthur Agee and William Gates. Their lives from the time they go into as a freshman all the way up till they go to the senior, and then they go off into college or whatever they do. And then it also talks about their documents their parents, their family life, their school life, their coaches, recruitment, the recruitment process of high school basketball players and so forth. This movie came out 32-ish years ago. And one of the most fascinating things about it was considered one of the best movies of the year in 1994. Roger Ebert himself actually said it was the #1 movie of the year. He was blown away. Granted, he is a Chicago film critic.
Yeah.
So there's a little bit of bias there, a little bit of bias there, but I honestly think where we take for granted reality television, documentaries, true crime things, and so forth. This is a forerunner of what we see today as just ho-hum, whatever. We see people being documented all the time. They have what's called influencers and all this kind of stuff where people are just recording themselves all the time. So this is a forerunner of that genre, the reality television genre and so forth. So this is one of the reasons why it's so great. But the other reason is you get to see the lives of just two normal teenage kids going through high school, trying to get that dream, trying to achieve that dream of being an NBA basketball player. And the reason going into the reason why I picked this movie was I actually tried to be a basketball player. I tried out for the basketball.
Wait a second. Nuh-uh.
Yeah. I tried out for the basketball team. In my junior year, didn't make it. In my senior year, I almost made it. I'm not going to say the reasons why I didn't make it on here, but I became the equipment manager and then eventually the clock keeper for 25 years. Working with a gentleman by the name of John Zioli. He's like a father figure to me. He's been there for more times than I can count. Things when I did things wrong, he was there for me. When I was in financial difficulties, he's helped me out in financial difficulties. When I needed a meal, he bought me a meal. He brought me McDonald's or something. He was always there for me. This guy was, and he's as close to a father figure as I've ever had in my entire life, you know. But being around high school basketball and basketball in general really opened my eyes to the struggles of kids and their families in the inner city. And, you know, I currently live in Florida, and, you know, I'm from Massachusetts, where I kind of grew up in a slum of offshoot of Boston called Lowell. And it's nice now because they did a few things to the city to kind of clean it up. But in each of the towns in Florida, there's what we would call a neighborhood. And in the town I live in, there are two neighborhoods, one on the west side and one on the east side. And there's a lot of kids that grow up in poverty, that they barely have food to live. They don't have shoes. They don't have clothes. So going to play for their local high school basketball team or middle school team and then go to the high school is something that they strive for. Got out of their house, their neighborhood that they live in, and go to school, try to get an education, and show that they have the ability to be something and be somebody, to where possibly colleges and then maybe NBA scouts would go for these kids. And I've seen kids like Vince Carter. I don't know if you know who Vince Carter is. Vince Carter played
Raptors.
for the Toronto Raptors. He's now an NBC NBA analyst. I seen him come up through high school. The guy was incredible, incredible. I've seen other kids that you may not know who they are, named Keith Brumbaugh. The guy was incredible. But there's a pyramid in sports. And you as a baseball player, Steven, you know about the pyramid of sports. When it comes at the bottom, you have all the kids striving to be the next whoever, Chipper Jones or Michael Jordan or whatever,
Sure.
Joe Montana, whatever. And then as time and years and progress, that pyramid gets smaller and smaller and smaller. Now, your brother was a successful baseball player. He made it to the minors. So he made it up that pyramid higher than you did. A lot of kids don't make it up that pyramid of success when it comes to sports. And I've seen it from baseball, football, basketball. I've seen it from all perspectives, volleyball, you name it. And I love the fact that you've seen these kids as freshmen and you see them gradually grow up through high school. One of the kids, Arthur Agee, goes to the Catholic school. He gets recruited to go to the Catholic school that Isaiah Thomas went to. And then his grades, his parents don't have the money. They separate. They don't have a lot of money. So he has to go to the local public school, which is where I went to school, and I coached and worked with the basketball program at DeLand High School, where I currently live in the town of DeLand, Florida. And then you had the other kid who he ended up with injuries, but he had enough to where they kept wanting to invest in him. They kept wanting to keep him around to where he could potentially make it to the third, fourth round of the playoff. As they say, make it downstate. That's Champaign, Illinois. That's where the state championships are in the University of Illinois. And I've seen this thousands of times in my lifetime, including with myself. My brother was a phenomenal football player. He had all kinds of recruits. Got in trouble, ended up in the military, had a great career in the military. His career of being a football player was sidelined because of the things he did. And this is what happens. And that's what's so fascinating about this document. You see the ups and downs of these two boys, these two kids. And I think that's where Steve James really captures the essence of the pyramid of athletics, or the pyramid of success when it comes to sports and so forth. Steven, you were an athlete. You were a baseball player. Your brother was a baseball player. You could kind of, in a way, resonate with the story, even though you're obviously not an inner city black basketball player.
Sure. I think the biggest thing I could empathize, I mean, I've seen the movie multiple times now. I think what I take from the film that resonates the most for me, especially seeing my brother go through what he went through, is the politics of what it is to become an elite athlete at the top level. Is that it's not all about who has the most talent. It's sometimes about your social standing, your position, and sometimes that even putting yourself in what you think is the right position doesn't always create the best position for the person, because you talk about the one player that went to the school that Isaiah Thomas went to. He ended up kind of having the harder path to success than the other kid did, who and honestly, it felt like by the time that kid at that school, he kind of like lost his passion for basketball, playing for the school that was all about winning and was all about,
Coach was pretty hard on him, wasn't he?
Yeah, they were super intense about it, and he lost his. And I saw that with my brother. My brother, did pretty well, and as he went up the ranks, and it became more and more political, and like whoever gets paid more gets more chances. That's another thing in sports, but of course we're only in high school at this point. But like, that stuff takes a toll, and you lose your passion for it. Now the other kid, yeah, he's in the slummier high school where he's not getting as many eyes on him, but his coach and his situation is not causing him to lose his passion for the game itself. It's not being tampered by what's going on in that situation. So there's you're seeing two different situations and two different people trying to strive for the same thing, but through two different filters, and they're both in a sense tragic. I think that's, to me, what I take from the movie. I'm not saying it doesn't have its hopefulness to it, but the movie to me is almost like a kind of a tragedy of like what it means to strive for your dreams in America today, or even then, that it's almost like commercialism, like commercialism sells it, like you can do this, anybody can do this, but really the system only allows for the people that they want to be in the club to be in the club. And not everybody, doesn't matter how talented you are, only certain people are going to rise to the top. And it's the people that have the most money, have the most, the most luck, the most people that they know, and that it sucks, like it's not a great situation. Andrew.
Yeah, it's interesting. The movie is now 32 years old, and the events in the movie are even from an earlier time than 32 years ago, because I believe the events take place in the late 80s. Because
early 90s.
Early 90s. Yeah.
Well, I want to say late 80s just because it takes place. It chronicles the 4 years of their lives in high school.
Good point.
Because you go from grade to grade, you go freshman, sophomore, junior, and senior year, which they focus on significantly a lot. And the senior year portion of the movie it's like an hour long. It's like half the movie, nearly, or a third of it. It's interesting just because the movie, as time has gone on, has also functioned as a bit of a time capsule piece, because not only depicting, the late 80s culture and late 80s inner city culture and youth sports at the time and youth basketball and stuff like that, but just the way in which recruitment goes is so vastly different now in the world of youth sports and stuff like that. The way in which the system is now is even 100 times more difficult than when these kids were going through that system. So if you think they had a tough time going through and trying to make it, nowadays it's so much tougher, because nowadays a lot of it is predicated upon money, having the funds to put your kids in the right positions, put your kids in the right schools, the right programs, the right camps, the right everything. That's why you see a lot of kids go from schools to schools to schools just to get the best advantage possible. And one thing we didn't really talk about is they emphasized how important the education is as well, because if you don't make the grades, you can't play. That's kind of how it used to be. Nowadays, they probably structure things a little bit differently, especially when you get to college and you take certain courses that are designed for players to kind of just pass. But that's a whole big other story. They did a whole 30 for 30 on that with North Carolina and whatnot.
I believe.
Well, that's why I was gonna bring this up. Just using the two people that I mentioned. Vince Carter had a very good home life. He had good parents. He had a nice home and stuff. And he was the band. He was the leader of the band. He was the marching captain of the band and so forth. And yet he was also a great basketball player, and he won 3 state championships in 4 years. My town of D-Land, 2 of those years gave them their only loss because our neighborhood kids weren't afraid of their neighborhood kids. Take it for what you will. That's what our kids told me. We're not afraid of them. we grew up in the same background they grew up in.
Sounds like it sounds like it was like the Outsiders over there.
It's a little bit of a rivalry going on there.
Yeah.
But that is actually fascinating because, Dan is from the state of Florida, which is notoriously a scouting land for football, basketball, baseball. I mean, people go from all over the country down there to scout players.
Yeah.
Just like places like Texas, California, Georgia. I mean, people come from all over the country to those places to scout athletes and try to find the best ones and whatnot and all that kind of stuff. Being from the Northeast, basketball is pretty big up here, like Dan kind of alluded to. I mean, basketball famously was founded in Connecticut, which is one state away from me. So, that's where the Basketball Hall of Fame is. Boston is big basketball place. Basketball programs around here are pretty elite. I think a lot of that is to do with the fact that there's not a lot of big football and other programs around here, so basketball is kind of elite in the Northeast corridor.
Well,
so growing up around basketball and basketball being so featured in real life, to me, really gives you kind of a personal connection to this Hoop Dreams documentary. It's such a fascinating capsule piece of, and there's big themes in the movie too, of like, pursuing your dreams and overcoming hardships, whether it be physical, whether it be family life and all that kind of stuff. And the movie is, 2 hours and 52 minutes. You get a lot of elements thrown into this documentary. It actually won the Academy Award for Best Editing back in '94, which you never see that for a documentary.
Best documentary, though. It didn't even get nominated. Okay,
which is kind of odd to me.
Let's not go down the whole rabbit hole, but I will explain this really quickly. I'm going to explain the documentary. Okay, so when it comes to the documentary back then, 1994, all the people that were in the documentary branch sat in a room and watched the documentaries, and they would have a clicker. And the clicker would have a red light, and the red light would click whether they wanted to keep playing the movie or they didn't want to keep playing the movie. And if you got a lot of red lights, they would just get rid of the movie, and then when they move on to the next one, and that wouldn't get a lot of positive buzz from the documentary branch back in the day. And so today we see that the populist documentaries are creeping into the overall 5 nominees more often than not. But you go to the Christopher Reeve documentary, you go to the Mr. Rogers documentary, you go to other documentaries over the years that don't even make it into the 5 because they're the John Candy documentary last year, because they're quote unquote populist. The documentary branch as a whole don't want to go for the populist thing. So when Roger Ebert put it out there that this is his #1 movie of the year, this is the best movie of the year, everybody needs to see this movie, and everybody was raving about this. Of course, the documentary, this hoity-toity, uppity kind of group, like, screw you, we're not putting that. And so that's why it didn't get nominated. That's the abridged version of basically what happened with Hoop Dreams. And today, obviously, and we always talk about this because we talk about movies from the 50s, movies from the 70s, movies from the 80s. Time heals all wounds, or time determines what's great and what's not great. 32 years later, here I am talking with my 2 good buddies about this documentary because it means so much to me in my life. And I know for a fact it means a lot to a lot of other people. And so it's time that really is the judge of what we perceive as being great or not great. So who's the bad guys in this? The documentary branch of the Academy. That's who's the bad guys in this.
Yeah, it's interesting that you mentioned, like, because it has been 32 years. I don't think I've ever seen a best of documentary like listing online that did not include this documentary. Every single best documentary list I've ever seen includes Hoop Dreams on it. And I think the reason being is kind of like what Dan was saying, is that like over time, the themes in this movie the way in which the movie's constructed, the genuine humanity that's portrayed in the movie has stood the test of time because it's so general and so open and can be so relatable to many people, or at least they can empathize with these characters in a way, empathize with this journey, this this search these young men are going through to kind of get better their situation, better their lives through the game of basketball. We can relate to that in other facets of our lives and other avenues. The movie itself really captures that very well and very genuine. And it's a really well put together. I mean, I mentioned how long the movie is, and I was rewatching it yesterday, and I was like, it moves pretty quickly for the most part. Like I said, it does get stuck down a little bit in the senior year, which takes like an hour of the movie. But other than that, it really moves pretty well. And we don't see a lot of documentaries that are like 3 hours long that people kind of laud over, because I think nowadays people prefer the shorter films now anyway. But Hoop Dreams, like I said, is on every best documentary list. And it's been part of the Criterion Collection forever. I want to say, there was probably a Hoop Dreams Laserdisc. I'm assuming there was. I know it's been around on DVD, on Blu-ray, et cetera, et cetera. So it's in many people's collections over time. Even if you're not like a big enthusiastic documentary fanatic, because documentary is such a niche genre that not everybody's a big fan of it. This movie has just captured a lot of people's imaginations.
And Steven, you got something you want to say about anything?
I was gonna say one scene in the movie that really like hits home with what I took from it is when they go to the college and there's a bunch of speakers, and who is there? Spike Lee.
Yeah.
I mean, out of all the people, what is the thing he talks about? He literally talks about the fact that they're just trying to make money off of you. Like, this is all, they don't care about your dream to be like the great basketball player, or, the great athlete. They just care about making money off of you. And that's why I look at this whole thing as, because of how it ends up. It's a tragedy because it's what Spike says is the truth. It's like most people will not make it. And like you said, most people will not make it to the top of that pyramid.
The percentage of people who try to make it to a professional level and do make it is probably very slim.
Yeah, and you can spend a decade trying to do it. That's how long a lot of people, even and especially baseball, but like in like most sports, you could spend a lot of time trying to go through college and then going to join some independent league, just try to hang in there to like get to the professional level. And it could take a decade and you don't make it. And you're like, what do I do with my life? Like, what do I do? Like,
well, yeah, that was, I was going to use the other comparison of like Vince had good grades and he had good parents and he had a nice house and he was Mr. Big Shot around campus, where is the other guy? He struggled. He didn't have a great parental. He had a mother, and then he ended up living with a booster in town who helped him out and stuff. Then he ends up getting recruited, and he ends up at Oklahoma State, and something happens. He ends up having to come back. He ends up in the D League. Something happens there. He ends up coming back. So you have two parallels of two different guys who had the exact same ability. One was a 6'7", 6'8" left-handed guy who could do it all. The other was the exact opposite. But he had a system in place, parental things. They had money. They were better off. He had a good education. He had it up here. And so he ends up being, and I'll even go to North Carolina, to your state, Stephen. He ends up going to the University of North Carolina. Vince Carter does, right? He ends up playing with guys named Rasheed Wallace, Jerry Stackhouse, Jameson. All these guys would leave school a year or two early to go to the NBA, to get that dream, to get that goal. Vince, what did he do? Stayed and got his education and went to the NBA later on, ends up with the longest career of all of them guys. Know why?
Yeah.
He had it upstairs. And now he's a color commentator for NBC, making more money. And I want to talk about the parents and the situations, like the mother of Arthur Agee. She loses her job. She's trying to get assistance, and she can't pay the Catholic school, so he has to go to the public school. And then the father and the mother separate. We see that, and then eventually this father comes back into the picture. This is a typical, and I'm not going to say every Black family, but this is a typical kind of Black family in inner city America, where the father is not necessarily the best parent. He's out doing things wrong. He could end up in jail, but I like James. He gets this on camera. He gets the parents to talk about the problems with the relationship and the problems with finances and the problems with trying to get help and so forth. And this is how I know I'm not a Black kid from inner city America. I'm a white guy, but I had a lot of these problems. My father wasn't there. He was an abusive father. He was an alcoholic. My mother had to raise 4 kids on her own. So I can really relate to the struggles of the Arthur Agee character in a lot of ways. You know, he ended up at Arkansas State, and William Gates ended up at Marquette with a wife and a child, I might add. He ends up getting an education from Marquette, he does. And Arthur ends up going to Arkansas State, you know, spending his time down in the South because he had family relatives down there. But I just feel like you just see this everywhere, all over the place, and that James really got to the bottom of what society for these people are like. But it could be a white family, it could be a Latino family, it could be whatever, you know what I mean? And it's just not just Black families that are doing this and whatnot. And I think he just chose these 2 kids because they're from the same place, and he wanted to see the dichotomy of where their lives led them and how one had had all this potential at the bottom, and then as injuries and a child came into it in a relationship and stuff crept into the picture, his love of the game kind of dropped off. Whereas the other one, not having that pressure of being in that Catholic school and having that coach constantly yelling at you and saying it's your fault that they lost and all this stuff, and having the inner city school, the kids thought he was great. He had the shoes, he had everything. Yeah, was his grades great? No, but it ended up being a better situation for him. You know what I mean? And I liked how the movie transitions from that. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I think that what's the kid that goes to the nicer school? What's his name?
William Gates.
William. So he not only does like him ended up having a kid in high school that plays I think that also parallels with the fact that his own father was kind of like, he was there, but he was like jealous of his son and was like always like getting on him and hard on him the whole time because he was jealous because he didn't make it. He didn't.
Without his older brother? You sure that wasn't his?
Yeah, that was his older brother.
Was that I thought it was his dad.
Yeah, his older. Interesting aspect to the documentary that they hopped on a little bit.
I love that.
He had a much older brother who was really talented in sports.
Really,
yeah.
And so it was kind of like perhaps, you know, there's the whole thing living in your brother's shadow, or living in your father's shadow, or you're living in your family shadow or something like that, which they touched on a little bit. But there was it was the older brother. They kept cutting back to him how
the way that they
stuff.
I missed it, but the way they portray him in the movie, he's like a dad figure. He's like,
yeah, he is a father figure to his brother because he's a little bit older. He's not. Like,
I think you're thinking of
age difference in him.
The other kid, Arthur Agee's father, was the one who also was the one who was saying like, oh, when I was young, I could have made it, but I didn't.
Well, he had his moments.
Yeah. He would show up to the court and like try to play with the kids and stuff. There are a lot of adults like that who was still living off of
vicariously through the children.
Yeah, but
but
I don't feel like he didn't put pressure on his son to be great. He let him go out and play. That's just fun, like fucking around, like with your dad. Like that's normal. But the other guy who I thought was his father, but I guess is his much older brother.
Yeah.
He had an unhealthy like like I know how to play the game and you're not doing it right. And let me put you down and let me put
Yeah.
pressure on
Explain to
you
you.
about how to do it the right way. But his coaches were doing that. He was doing that. And it was just a situation where he lost the lust for the game
And
because, and then he went in, you know, I'm not saying it's okay. He made it a mistake and he had a child that he shouldn't have had when should have been focusing on school and sports. He went off and had a kid. I mean, and
at a
you know,
very young age too.
at a
Now,
very
let me
young
go where the
age.
coach, he tells the coach,
Yeah, tells the coach after
you
3
tell
months.
me now, 6 months later, you tell me now that you got a kid what happened 6 months? Why didn't you tell me back then?
And if I'm remembering right, the coach even suggested that he basically say, let the kid, like, don't be a parent.
I know. Oh,
He even suggested that too.
Yeah.
Like basically, you know, let her raise the kid and don't worry about the kid, which is terrible. You know,
and I've
like
seen that at DeLand High School. I've seen great basketball players that end up having a kid in school, and their whole career is waylaid by the fact that they got to take care of this kid. And yeah, I've seen it. I've seen it a couple times.
And that's why I look at this movie as a tragedy, because it really paints the picture of, like, not only of, you know, inner city, like people that are trying to find a way out, like Andrew said, like, and they look at this game as a way, something that they're good at, that people love, and that they can find a way out this way. But even as good as they can be, it's like almost impossible, because it's the only way a lot of people in this situation can see themselves ever making it anywhere. And because they don't think they're smart enough. They don't think that there's normal jobs that will be good enough. And so, because they see their parents struggle, and they're like, well, if they're struggling, I'm going to struggle. So they see Michael Jordan on the TV. They see these guys that play basketball, something that they love, is their only way out.
Well, yeah, at that time, exactly.
You know,
the Bulls were.
It was the biggest team in the world.
Yeah.
So ironically, we're documenting two guys from Chicago, and they're watching the Bulls, the most successful team in the NBA at the time. You know,
what is interesting also, you have to, and this is just me being like a sports historian type of mindset, but at that time, the NBA was considered kind of the big time only professional league there was. International professional leagues were nowhere near on the level that they are today at all. So it's not like they had a secondary option where they could go play overseas like a lot of people do now, and play in professional leagues in like Italy and Europe and Greece and stuff like that. South America.
The NBA has the D League now.
And the NBA didn't have
a baseball has single A, double A,
back then.
They have the D League now.
No real avenue other than making it to the NBA, and if you didn't make it there, there weren't a lot of other options. There were other like semi-pro leagues and things like that, but they were so far below professional or NBA level that it was an option, but it's nowhere near the NBA option or equivalent to the NBA option that exists today for a lot of people. I know a lot of great basketball players that came through the college I went to that went straight overseas. They went straight from college to playing professionally overseas and played for years and years and years, made good money and stuff like that. And
you get a good education from Providence. Providence is a good education. You know,
graduated
something that's a cheap education. You get a good education. You're smart.
You're not
smart. You know.
The college I went to was a private institution with tuition and stuff like that. Marquette University, which one of the kids went to, is a private university as well. Pretty big time. And what's interesting is that Marquette in the early 90s is not the same Marquette as it is now. And Marquette in the early 90s,
were growing. Marquette was growing into a college basketball power at that time.
They were in a small conference, it was like the Midwest Conference or something like that. It's not like now where they're like in a multi-million-dollar like national televised conference and stuff like that, but still, you would think that they were a big time program the way in which they pitched it to the William character, like, we want to win a national championship. Well, I'm like, okay, slow your roll.
Yeah, he got the good end of the stick on this, because they guaranteed him college no matter whether he played or not. They guaranteed him a
scholarship for 4
which
years.
Which is great. You know,
which he did. I think he did end up graduating from Marquette in general, because the movie only goes up to like 1991 in these kids' lives, and that's when they start. That's when they entered college. So
Yeah.
if you want to go and like learn about what happened to them afterward or during the rest of their lives, you can go read on Wikipedia. There may be some special features on the DVD and Blu-ray that may show it, but they're still around and doing projects around basketball and stuff to this day. I think one started like a clothing line or store or something. They've been doing podcasting. It's very interesting how like they've actually met up and been friends over the
Oh,
years as well, which is
I mean,
really interesting.
how are you not connected by something like this? I mean,
Mm.
it's a connection that you're going to have the rest of your life, that and nobody could ever take that away from you.
Yeah. Also,
go ahead.
I was gonna say that Illinois and that Chicagoland area is big time basketball recruiting area. Big time.
So
A
that
lot of
guy
big time
at the
guys
back-
come through there.
Yeah,
Yeah.
specifically that guy that would go to the courts and find players and then take them off to the schools and stuff. Those guys are everywhere. They're
Oh,
in
yeah.
every town, and Orlando has them, Daytona has them, Chicago has them, Boston has them. They're all over the place. They're kind of a shady kind of element of the game of basketball,
yeah.
but they're
But
also
it's
a
interesting
must
now.
element. What's the word? They're a shady element to the game of basketball, but they're also a necessity to the game of basketball, because there are a lot of kids that sometimes these kids don't get discovered, and they need somebody like that to get them into a AA or youth leagues. And
Yeah. The AAU leagues, travel basketball. I mean, it's like that in every sport, whether it's baseball, soccer, basketball, hockey. It's big. You have to put big time
even
money.
girls sports,
into
girls
the
basketball,
system.
volleyball,
It's
things like that.
very expensive.
Softball, Florida. I mean, when you said Florida was like, it is literally the hotbed of sports for all sports: softball, swimming, volleyball, baseball, football, basketball. I mean, there's tennis academies here. I mean, it's golf academies here. I mean, it's every sport you could imagine, because
I knew this video was going to turn into you guys just talking about sports in general.
Well, you can't help. I mean, this is known as kind of like the best sports documentary ever. Or
Yeah,
at least
yeah,
one
for
of them.
sure, for sure.
There have been other sports documentaries. I mean, ESPN did their whole 30 for 30 series, which I think is still amazing to this day. So that's just a lot of like shorter sports documentaries and stuff. But this one is so theatrical and so interesting, kind of going back to what Dan was saying at the beginning of this, where you didn't really see a lot of documentaries that would traverse several years in the lives of two people you didn't know about. Like, these aren't famous people you're following here, and it's not a documentary about their lives, like per se, but just a small snippet of their lives. And also this idea of like reality TV or documenting people's lives is so regular today, because people do it all the time, online and stuff like that, where like this documentary is decades ahead of its time. Even documentaries back then weren't like this. They were like educational. Thinking of like educational documentaries. Like I'm thinking like Brief History of Time, For All Mankind, which is about NASA and the space race and stuff like that. There are other documentaries like Harlan County, USA, which are about like workers and unionizing and stuff like that, which is very human stuff. But just to follow these two young kids in inner city basketball, I don't think there were a lot of documentaries like that coming out at the time. Not like it is now.
There'd be documentaries about the AIDS crisis or apartheid and stuff like that, right?
Yeah, you get like educational documentaries about like, Vietnam and about the government and about, world wars and things like that are great and educational, but this is different.
I think it's because society has changed. I think society has become so much more, capitalistic and popular culture driven, that the subject matters for documentaries have become way more broad, intermingled with society, than just needing information about historical events. We need to enter the subculture of society and make documentaries about that.
Well, also the fact that we have a camera in our pocket. Have a camera in our pocket. Anybody can document anything. I mean, I love some of the shorts that I've been seeing lately. Some of the Academy nominated shorts and stuff like that. It's like you take video footage from a pole, and then you get police camera footage on their chest and you put it all together and you have a short film. You know what I mean? It's like crazy what editors and people can do if you really put your mind to it when it comes to making movies and making films these days. And documentaries have really traversed all. You've had 10-part documentaries where, you know, the baseball, the history of baseball, or the history of the Civil War, or Michael Jordan, or O.J. Simpson, or I mean, all kinds of different types of all sizes and shapes and whatnot. You know what I mean?
Yeah, we haven't even talked about the true crime documentaries, which have cropped up over the last decade or so, become super popular. Docu-series are more popular now than ever before.
Oh yeah, absolutely. But I want to ask you guys this. I mean, when you started watching this movie, when you start seeing these characters, did you have any idea where their lives would turn or where things would go for them? Obviously, you watched it a couple times since the first time you watched it, Stephen, and maybe you same. Did you know that these guys weren't going to really have like these NBA type of lives when you started watching this movie? They were just going to be just normal guys.
Probably the first time I didn't think about it too much. And that's how I am about most things when I'm watching it. I don't like to try to uncover the movie before I've watched it. I like to jump on the ride of the movie and let it take me where it wants to. But, you know, when I first watched this, it was probably when I was a little younger, before my brother was, you know, in college baseball and blah, blah, blah. And so I probably thought then, like, you know, who knows where this is going to go? Like, this could be cool if one of them makes it to the NBA or, you know, whatever. But afterwards, if I'd have watched this after my experiences, I would have probably been pretty cynical about where I thought this was going to go. And assumed that, like, knowing that it's just that difficult. Like, it's, and not ever hearing of these guys before. And I'm not like a super basketball fan, but when I was growing up, I was somewhat familiar with NBA at the time. And I was like, I had never heard of these guys. So
that is another thing. I'm kind of the opposite of Steven. Like, I've been obsessed with like basketball and the NBA and NBA history for a long time. So it's like, so the fact that I had never heard of them led me to believe that perhaps they never did really make it. And if they did make it, they weren't like superstar all-stars or anything like that. But then as I got older, also kind of going along with Steven, I realized that professional sports is increasingly difficult to break into, like impossible. Like people like to criticize certain professional athletes for how poor they play, or how, you know, they're bench warmers or whatever, they get on them, they suck or whatever. And I'm like, do you know how impossibly like gifted they have to be just to get to this level of professional sports? They've got to be like really, really excellent. They're like 99.9% better than everybody else who's ever played. And you consider them bad. and they're bench warmers. I think about that in the NBA all the time. Like, the last person on a roster is better than 99% of everybody playing basketball in like the world. It's like incredible. And the pool for professionals has only gotten bigger and bigger as like the sport has gotten more international, as sports grown in all facets of it, you know, and in several sports. So I'm like, yeah, I didn't really think about that. I'm more engrossed about the themes of the journey now than I am about where these characters kind of go. I'm more engrossed about like the dynamic between them and their families, and them and the culture of the time. And I look at it as more, like I said, a time capsule piece of like the late 1980s youth culture and youth sports.
Obviously, it is a time capsule.
It might as well be a completely different universe.
The clothes, the cars, the
haircuts,
the streets,
the brand of clothing they wear, the style of clothing, the music, all completely different than anything you'll ever see. Now, and I was around
36 years later, 32 years later, you gotta kind of go back and that's cool. You get to see all that kind of stuff. It's really, in a way, it's a period piece,
sure,
because it's a 32-year-old film. All right, so one more question. All right, so in the annals of basketball movies, sports movies in general, where would you guys put Hoop Dreams? Because I put it over the years, I've kind of risen it higher and higher on my list of of the greatest sports movies of all time. And I definitely think it's top 2 when it comes to basketball for me. It's Hoosiers really means a lot to me. So I kind of still have Hoosiers at 1, but I kind of put like Hoop Dreams now at like probably number 2 in the greatest basketball movies of all time. And it's in the top 20, I would say, of great sports movies of all time. I would say nowadays, and it's risen up my ranks over the years, back maybe when I was younger, maybe it wouldn't be as high, but as I've lived my life, I've dealt with all these kind of scenarios involving in the movie. It really has hit me more and more and has resonated with me more and more over the years. So I kind of put it in definitely in the top 20 of all-time sports movies, and probably number 2 on my basketball rankings.
Yeah, just trying to think about basketball movies. I mean, there's not a ton of them that I'm like super attached to. Like I think Coach Carter. I think there's a few that pop into my mind, but
Glory Road, Finding Forrester.
Yeah, Finding Forrester is like barely a basketball movie. That's not. That's more of a playing on the inner city. Him being in. Figuring out that he's way smarter. He's too smart for basketball.
Love and Basketball. Basketball Diaries.
Yeah, Love and Basketball is a good one.
I like the one about was it Alex English, Alex and Me, or Alex.
What White Man Can't Jump?
White Man Can't Jump is amazing.
That's a classic. That's kind
of. I really like He Got Game. I don't know if I'm in the minority.
Ray Allen.
He Got Game with.
I love that.
Ray Allen and Denzel Washington as father and son.
Blue Chips.
Yeah.
Blue Chips.
I knew you were a Blue Chips guy.
Blue Chips.
Well, I'm not like a super Blue Chip, but that's another
William
big
Friedkin.
one.
Is that William Friedkin directed Blue Chips? Really?
Yeah. Nick
I knew
Nolte.
Steven was a Blue Chips guy though.
Yeah, Shaq's in that movie.
We've talked about that before, and you like Nick Nolte in that one or some.
Yeah, but I mean, it's definitely up there though.
Yeah,
it's for sure up there.
Yeah, I would say top 10 basketball movie, probably top 10 sports movie.
Maybe top 20.
I'd say top 20.
I say top 20, 25 sports movie.
Yeah.
Because baseball movies are always going to be way ahead of all this stuff for me.
Yeah, for you. Yeah, I mean, it's also a personal thing.
It is for sure personal. And even there's even some boxing movies, football movies that I like probably more than that. Like I'd probably watch Remember the Titans more than I'd watch Hoop Dreams. Like it would be more personal preference for sure.
Don't tell me Little Giants.
Little Giants is pretty amazing.
I'm leaving. I'm leaving the stream right now.
No, I love that movie, but no, Hoop Dreams is better than Little Giants. I'll give him that. But yeah, it's definitely up there, and it's a good one. It's a good first documentary to throw in here, Dan.
Yeah, well, I just felt like, what, with my life revolving around basketball, like half of my life revolved around the game of basketball, and I've seen so many kids come and go, and most of them don't make it and stuff. And I thought, wow, this really encapsulates my life in a lot of ways, considering where I come from and how I try to be a basketball player and barely missed a basketball team. You know that happened. Barely missed a team.
Barely missed it.
A kid. Okay, I'll tell you real quick.
No, you don't have to tell us. I'm
going to tell you. I barely missed a team because the kid I was basically fighting for the final spot on the team, he was a junior and I was a senior, and his father was a booster, and he also played football, and so his father could bring money into the sports program at the time. That's when parents donated money to the programs and stuff. And so the coach decided to put him on the team. And then I still practiced with the team because I was the manager, and coach would put me on the best guard, and I'd steal the ball from the guard, and he'd be yelling at the guard, "How you letting Skip steal the ball from you? He's a white guy, slow." He'd be giving the other guy a hard time. He's like, "How you letting Skip steal the ball from you? Why can't you get past him?"
I mean, they just look stupid for not putting you in the team. I mean, it just makes them look dumb.
Years later, 25, 30 years later, I asked the coach after he retired, and I said to him, I said, "Hey, all these years later, I said, Coach Z, what is your biggest regret? He says, not putting you on the team instead of putting that other guy on the team. He might have been BSing me. Who knows? But he said that honestly to me. Not putting you on the team and putting that other guy on the team instead.
You should hold on to it, Dan.
I do.
Hold
on to that. I do hold on to that.
Hold on to it, Dan. But we're gonna have to let go of Hoop Dreams on this because we got to talk about next month's episode, which is my turn. Finally, back around to me. So I was like, I'm looking at I always go back and look at what else I've brought up on this show. So I don't think I've really brought forth like a kind of serious movie, something like I've picked a lot of fun stuff that's really important to me. The closest I've gotten to serious is maybe like About Time or that's a little bit more on the serious side. I'm gonna pick a very much a foundational movie. Usually when you hear me talk about foundational, and it's like something that was important to my movie loving journey, I always talk about The Matrix. The Matrix is a big one, but I'm going to go a little bit ahead of that and pick another one that's very important to my kind of beginnings as somebody thinking about films beyond just the entertainment part of it, but the filmmaking. And in this case, it got me really into the screenwriting aspect of it. And that's Christopher Nolan's Memento.
Nicely done.
It's a amazing script, Jonathan Nolan, based on a short story. And Memento was kind of not the first Nolan movie, but essentially his coming out party. I mean, he had done the following, and then this was the big indie hit that jumped out in 2000, and Guy Pearce. This movie fascinated me when it came out, even as a young teen. It just fascinated me, and I was deciphering that movie for years until I got a little older and I started to understand it a little bit better. And now it's just endlessly rewatchable. It kind of fits into noir, which is a favorite genre of mine. So we'll get into it next month here on Movies Down Memory Lane. But
and weirdly enough, Steven, it's a 1999 movie. How ironic is
it 1999?
Yeah.
Or is it 2000? I thought it was 2000.
99. That's a 99. Okay.
All right. Well, and funny enough, Nolan's got his new movie, The Odyssey, coming out right around the time that episode will happen, because it'll be at the end of June. His new movie, The Odyssey, is coming out beginning of July, right? Or middle of July.
That'll be the second Nolan movie on Movies Down Memory Lane.
We did Dark Knight.
We did Dark Knight, yes.
Yep. So Nolan is important to us, apparently, in some ways. But we'll see you then, guys. And hey, go watch some of your favorite movies, guys. Love them. Cherish them. Good night.